There's actually a very simple story that accompanies this truth, which is there are very few creatures in which gametes are the same size. There's an unstable equilibrium in which gametes are equal size. And what that means is that gametes in any creature that has two sexes will tend to have one sex with small mobile gametes and another sex with large sessile gametes. Once you have that dynamic, you have an asymmetry in the interest of the parents in investing in those gametes. Small mobile gametes are not worth investing heavily in, and large sessile gametes are worth being choosy over because the investment that they contain is greater. Now that has almost nothing to do with us at a direct level, but every time we have had creatures evolve in which there's an asymmetry of investment in offspring, you get other things evolving as a consequence, like choosiness. It is natural that a creature that has larger gametes should be choosy. It is natural that a creature that gets pregnant should be choosy. It is natural that a creature that has offspring with a long childhood should be choosy. Now in human beings, we have a really interesting situation where men reproduce by two strategies. Men can love them and leave them, in which case they're not very choosy because why should they be at an evolutionary level? And men, more generally, invest in their offspring, in which case they have every reason to be as choosy as women do. So human beings are not some standard case from nature. They're a special case and an interesting one. But to imagine that females being more reluctant about sex was the idea of men who wanted to impose something on women is preposterous. It exists in birds, it exists in insects, it exists in trees.
And when you're talking about sort of masculine and feminine going down so deep, what I hear is sort of the potential for that even to map onto some of the ancient wisdom traditions, the idea of the Tao as being the yin-yang, going sort of right down into being, that you have this sort of masculine and feminine dynamic playing out. Do you think does that kind of analogy work?
Absolutely. And in fact, there's an important evolutionary principle discovered by a biologist named Fisher. Fisher's sex ratio principle says that it is actually, although males can produce many more offspring in a lifetime than females can, on average, males and females produce the same number, because for every male who produces an above average number of offspring, there's some male who produces a below average number of offspring. So the variance in males is high, the variance in females is lower, but the average is equally valuable. So sex ratios tend to be even at birth because there's no evolutionary advantage to producing males or females. In fact, what you want to do is produce that which is in lower supply. This is a perfect yin-yang. They are not symmetrical and identical in that sense, but they are compatible symmetries that reflect a balance between two forces. And the punchline to the joke is that we are not one or the other. Evolutionarily speaking, all your genes but a handful spend half their time in female form and half their time in male form, and so they aren't really about one of these two strategies winning out over the other, because half the time they would be on the losing end.